When this scrappy Southern road comedy first hit theaters, audiences expected nothing more than fast cars and a few cheap laughs. What they got instead was a box office juggernaut that trailed only Star Wars in ticket sales that year. Behind the wheel was Burt Reynolds at the peak of his charm, a first-time director with a stuntman's instincts and a production budget that nearly collapsed before a single scene was shot. But the wildest part of this story? It all began with a case of beer that nobody was legally allowed to carry across state lines. Number 1. The beer run that started it all. Long before cameras rolled, the idea for this film came from something surprisingly simple: a beer run. Back in the 1970s, Coors wasn't legally distributed east of the Mississippi River, which turned it into one of the most sought-after drinks in the country. Getting your hands on a case meant crossing state lines and breaking the law, and plenty of people were willing to do exactly that. The demand was so high that an underground network of informal smuggling routes had developed across the South. That real-world demand caught the attention of stuntman-turned-director Hal Needham. He had first-hand experience with how far people would go to get their hands on Coors and realized the whole underground beer trade had the makings of a movie. The concept was simple but loaded with potential: a cross-country run, the law in pursuit, and a ticking clock. It was the kind of premise that practically wrote itself, blending outlaw energy with pure American absurdity. Needham quickly drafted the idea into a screenplay, and just like that, a minor regional inconvenience became the foundation for one of the biggest surprise hits of the decade. What started as a casual observation about bootleg beer evolved into a full-blown cinematic phenomenon that no one, including the studio, saw coming. Number 2. Reynolds called it the worst. Before becoming the face of the film, Burt Reynolds had one major issue with the project: he couldn't stand the script. After reading the early draft, he reportedly told Hal Needham it was the worst screenplay he had ever laid eyes on. It wasn't exactly the kind of endorsement a first-time director wants to hear from his leading man, and it nearly put the entire production in jeopardy before it even had a chance to begin. Friends and colleagues weren't any more encouraging. Several people close to Reynolds urged him to walk away, warning that the movie could damage his rising career. On paper, it looked like a low-budget gamble with no real upside, and the material didn't scream blockbuster by any stretch of the imagination. The consensus around Hollywood was that this was a film best avoided. But Reynolds trusted Needham, not the script, but the man behind it. The two had a long friendship forged through years of stunt work and shared instincts about what audiences really wanted to see. That personal loyalty overruled every red flag, and Reynolds signed on despite the doubts. It turned out to be one of the smartest career moves he ever made, transforming both their careers overnight. Number 3. A budget cut before cameras rolled. Just when production seemed ready to go, a financial blow nearly derailed everything. Universal had approved the film's budget, but days before shooting was set to begin, the studio slashed the funding significantly. Overnight, the production team had to rethink their entire approach to making the movie. Plans that had been carefully laid out were suddenly thrown into chaos. Director Hal Needham was forced to restructure the shooting schedule on the fly, cutting corners wherever possible without sacrificing the film's energy. Making things even tighter, a large chunk of the remaining budget went directly to Reynolds' salary, leaving very little room for anything else. Every scene had to be shot efficiently, with almost no margin for reshoots or delays. Cast and crew had to work faster and smarter than originally planned. Rather than sinking the project, those financial constraints actually shaped the movie's identity. The loose, freewheeling tone audiences eventually fell in love with wasn't entirely a creative choice. It was partly born out of necessity. With no money to overthink anything, the cast and crew leaned into spontaneity, and the film became better for it. What could have been a disaster turned into the movie's secret weapon. Number 4. The Trans Am that became a star. Every great chase movie needs a great car, and few vehicles in cinema history have made a bigger impression than the black 1977 Pontiac Trans Am. It wasn't just a prop, it was practically a cast member, with its sleek design and roaring engine becoming inseparable from the Bandit's identity. From the moment it appeared on screen, it commanded attention in a way that few movie vehicles ever have. Pontiac supplied multiple vehicles for production, knowing the exposure could be valuable. What they probably didn't anticipate was just how valuable it would turn out to be. Several Trans Ams were destroyed during the film's intense stunt sequences, but the sacrifice paid off in ways no marketing campaign could have matched. After the movie hit theaters, Trans Am sales exploded across the country, with dealerships struggling to keep up with demand. The car became a cultural symbol almost overnight. It represented rebellion, speed, and style, everything the Bandit character embodied. Fans didn't just want to watch it on screen, they wanted to own one and feel that same rush for themselves. To this day, that black and gold Trans Am remains one of the most recognizable movie cars ever built, and its legend shows no signs of fading. Number 5. Gleason's wild on-set improv. One of the greatest comedic forces in the film came not from the script, but from pure instinct. Jackie Gleason was given an unusual amount of freedom on set, and he used every bit of it. Rather than sticking to the written dialogue, he regularly threw out his lines and replaced them with whatever felt right in the moment. The crew quickly learned to expect the unexpected whenever Gleason stepped in front of the camera. Some of the movie's most iconic moments were born from this approach. The now famous toilet paper gag and many of Sheriff Buford T. Justice's outrageous rants were completely unscripted. Gleason would launch into improvised tirades that left the cast struggling to keep straight faces, and Needham wisely kept the cameras rolling through all of it. No one ever quite knew what was coming next, and that raw spontaneity translated directly to the screen. That fearless improvisational energy gave the film a comedic unpredictability that no amount of careful writing could have replicated. Gleason wasn't just performing a character, he was inhabiting one, feeding off the energy of the moment and creating something genuinely electric. It became one of the movie's greatest strengths and a huge part of why audiences kept coming back for more. Number 6. Sheriff Justice, a casting risk. Casting the role of Sheriff Buford T. Justice was far from a straightforward decision. Studio executives had their own ideas about who should play the part, and Jackie Gleason wasn't at the top of their list. There were concerns that his style of comedy might not fit the tone they envisioned, and some felt a different actor could bring a more grounded presence to the role. The character's entire direction hung in the balance during early pre-production discussions. Burt Reynolds, however, saw something the executives didn't. He pushed hard for Gleason, believing that his larger-than-life comedic style was exactly what Sheriff Justice needed to become truly memorable. Reynolds understood that the film's villain shouldn't be threatening in a traditional sense. He needed to be absurdly funny, the kind of antagonist audiences would root against but secretly love watching. It was a creative instinct that went against conventional thinking at the time. The gamble paid off beyond anyone's expectations. Gleason transformed Sheriff Justice into one of the most quotable and beloved characters of the decade, delivering a performance that defined the movie just as much as the car chases and stunts. Without Reynolds' insistence, the role could have gone in a completely forgettable direction, and the film might never have achieved the iconic status it still proudly holds today. Number 7. The Real Buford T. Justice. Behind every great fictional character, there's often a spark of reality, and Sheriff Buford T. Justice was no exception. The character's name and fiery temperament were inspired by an actual law enforcement figure known personally to Burt Reynolds' family. The real-life personality behind the name carried a well-known reputation for colorful language and a short fuse, traits that translated perfectly into a comedic villain audiences would never forget. Reynolds shared stories about this individual with Jackie Gleason during production, giving the actor a rich well of real-life material to draw from. Gleason latched onto those details immediately, absorbing the mannerisms and attitude, and then amplifying everything to absurd proportions. He didn't just mimic reality, he inflated it into something far more entertaining, blending raw authenticity with exaggerated comedy in a way that felt completely natural on screen. The result was a character that felt strangely believable despite being wildly over the top. Audiences connected with Sheriff Justice because, underneath all the theatrics, there was a recognizable human foundation holding the entire performance together. That blend of truth and performance is a big part of what made the character endure for decades, long after the credits rolled for the very last time. Number 8. Pontiac's sequel car avalanche. After the first film turned the Trans Am into a nationwide obsession, Pontiac wasn't about to let that momentum slip away. When the sequel went into production, the automaker stepped up in a massive way, supplying an enormous fleet of vehicles far beyond what the original film had ever required. It was a clear signal that the company fully recognized the extraordinary marketing power this franchise carried with it. The sheer volume of cars shipped for the sequel reflected how dramatically the relationship between Hollywood and the automotive industry had shifted. What began as a modest product placement deal for the original movie had evolved into a full-scale branding partnership. Pontiac understood that every single frame of screen time featuring the Trans Am was worth more than any traditional advertisement they could possibly buy. This partnership set an early blueprint for how car manufacturers would approach Hollywood for decades to come. The original film didn't just sell movie tickets, it moved vehicles off dealership lots at an unprecedented rate. By doubling down on the sequel, Pontiac cemented a relationship that demonstrated the incredible commercial power of placing the right car in the right movie at exactly the right moment in time. Number 9. Real romance behind the camera. While the on-screen chemistry between the two leads felt effortless, something much deeper was happening behind the scenes. During production, Burt Reynolds and Sally Field began a genuine romantic relationship that quickly became one of Hollywood's most talked about pairings. What audiences saw on screen wasn't just good acting. It was a reflection of real emotions developing in real time between two people caught up in the whirlwind of making a movie together. Their connection brought an authenticity to the film that no script could have manufactured. The playful banter, the lingering glances, and the easy warmth between their characters all carried an extra layer of believability because those feelings weren't entirely fictional. Needham recognized what was happening and wisely leaned into it, allowing their natural dynamic to shape scenes in ways the original screenplay never anticipated. Beyond the movie itself, the relationship attracted enormous media attention and added an extra layer of public fascination to the film's lasting legacy. Fans weren't just invested in the Bandit and Frog as characters, they were invested in Reynolds and Field as a real couple. That emotional dimension gave the movie a heartbeat beyond the car chases and comedy, and it remains one of the most fondly remembered aspects of the entire production. Number 10. Sally Field's career gamble. Taking on the role of Frog wasn't an obvious move for an actress trying to be taken seriously in Hollywood. Sally Field had spent years fighting to escape the shadow of her early television work, and some studio executives openly questioned whether she had what it took to carry a major film role. The skepticism wasn't subtle. It was a real and persistent barrier she had to push through just to secure her place in the cast. Field saw the opportunity differently than her critics did. Rather than viewing the film as a step backward, she recognized it as a chance to show audiences and industry insiders a completely different side of her abilities. She brought intelligence, wit, and genuine emotional depth to a role that could have easily been one-dimensional in less capable hands. Her performance elevated every scene she appeared in and gave the movie a much-needed emotional anchor. The risk paid off in ways that extended far beyond the film's box office success. Her work in the movie helped reshape how Hollywood viewed her, opening doors to more substantial dramatic roles that would eventually earn her some of the industry's highest honors. What could have been a forgettable detour instead became a pivotal turning point, setting the stage for one of the most respected and celebrated careers in American cinema. Number 11. The script that kept changing. What audiences eventually saw on screen was a far cry from the earliest versions of the screenplay. The original drafts featured different character names, altered story beats, and a reward structure for the beer run that looked nothing like the final product. From the very beginning, the script was treated more like a living document than a finished blueprint, constantly shifting and evolving as new ideas emerged during the development process. Key characters evolved significantly through rounds of rewrites and ongoing production conversations. The role of Junior, for example, was developed and refined during discussions between the creative team rather than existing in the first draft. Supporting players were reshaped, motivations were adjusted, and entire dialogue exchanges were reworked to better serve the freewheeling tone that Needham was chasing. Nothing was considered sacred on the page if a better idea presented itself along the way. By the time the cameras started rolling, the screenplay had been through so many revisions that it barely resembled its original form. That willingness to keep tinkering, even at the very last minute, gave the film a sense of freshness that more rigidly produced movies often lack. The movie audiences fell in love with wasn't written in one sitting. It was assembled piece by piece, shaped by instinct and creative collaboration until everything finally clicked into place. Number 12. A movie built on improvisation. From the very first day of shooting, it became clear that this wouldn't be a production driven by the written page. The script was intentionally kept loose, giving the cast room to explore moments and find humor that no writer could have planned in advance. Director Hal Needham actively encouraged his actors to go off-book, trusting their instincts over rigid structure and letting scenes breathe in unexpected and often hilarious directions. This open approach created an atmosphere on set where spontaneity thrived above everything else. Conversations between characters had a natural, unforced rhythm that made the comedy feel genuine rather than rehearsed. Actors would riff off each other, building on jokes and reactions in real time, and Needham would simply let the cameras keep running to capture whatever magic unfolded. It was a risky way to make a movie, but the energy it produced was undeniable. That relaxed, anything-goes spirit became one of the film's most distinctive qualities. Audiences could feel the difference. The banter didn't sound like actors reciting lines, it sounded like real people having fun. In an era when many comedies relied on tightly scripted setups and carefully crafted punchlines, this movie carved out its own identity by embracing chaos and letting the performers lead the way. The result was a tone that felt effortless and genuinely impossible to replicate. Number 13. The $127 million Shockwave. Nobody in Hollywood predicted what was about to happen at the box office. Produced on a modest budget that had already been slashed before filming even began, the movie went on to earn an astonishing $127 million during its theatrical run. For a scrappy Southern comedy with no prestige pedigree and minimal studio expectations, those numbers were absolutely staggering and caught the entire industry completely off guard. To put the achievement in perspective, only one film outperformed it in 1977, and that film was Star Wars. Landing in second place behind one of the most revolutionary movies ever made was a feat no one associated with the production had dared to imagine. The film didn't just perform well, it dominated screens across the country, drawing massive audiences back for repeat viewings week after week throughout the entire summer season. The financial success sent shockwaves through the studio system. It proved that audiences were hungry for fun, unpretentious entertainment that didn't take itself too seriously. Hollywood executives who had previously dismissed the project were suddenly scrambling to understand how a low-budget car comedy had outperformed nearly everything else that year. The film's runaway success permanently rewrote assumptions about what kinds of stories could become massive commercial hits. Number 14. Jerry Reed almost was Bandit. Before Burt Reynolds ever climbed behind the wheel of that iconic Trans Am, another performer was being seriously considered for the lead role. Jerry Reed, the gifted country musician and actor, was initially in the conversation to play the Bandit himself. His natural Southern charm and easygoing screen presence made him a legitimate contender for the part. And for a brief period, the film's entire casting landscape looked very different from what audiences would eventually see. Once Reynolds committed to the project, the creative team pivoted and offered Reed the role of Cletus Snowman Snow instead. Rather than viewing it as a consolation prize, Reed fully embraced the character and made it entirely his own. He brought a warmth and authenticity to the trucker role that no one else could have delivered, drawing on his real-life roots in Southern culture to create a character that felt completely lived in and genuine from his very first scene. Reed's contributions went beyond just acting. His musical talent added another dimension to the film's identity, giving the production a built-in soundtrack artist who truly understood the world the movie was portraying. His presence behind the wheel of that 18-wheeler grounded the story in a way that resonated deeply with audiences who recognized the trucker lifestyle. It's hard to imagine the film working quite as well with anyone else riding alongside the Bandit on that legendary run. Number 15. Eastbound and Down, Overnight. Few movie theme songs have ever captured the spirit of a film as perfectly as this one did. Jerry Reed composed Eastbound and Down in a remarkably short window of time, crafting a track that instantly became inseparable from the movie itself. The song's driving rhythm and rebellious attitude matched the film's energy so precisely that it felt like it had always existed, even though it was written under incredibly tight deadline pressure during the production. The track did more than just accompany the action on screen. It amplified everything. Every time the song kicked in, audiences could feel the excitement of the open road and the thrill of staying one step ahead of the law. It became the movie's unofficial heartbeat, tying together the comedy, the stunts, and the freewheeling attitude into one cohesive experience that stuck with viewers long after they left the theater and found themselves humming it on the drive home. Beyond the film, the song took on a life entirely of its own. It climbed the music charts and became a standalone hit that introduced the movie to people who hadn't even seen it yet. Radio airplay helped fuel ticket sales, and ticket sales drove even more interest in the music, creating a powerful cycle of cross-promotion that benefited both the film and the soundtrack enormously. To this day, the opening notes of Eastbound and Down instantly conjure images of a black Trans Am tearing down a southern highway. Number 16. The Bridge Jump with a Booster. One of the most iconic moments in the entire film is a stunt so outrageous that it still gets talked about decades later. The scene called for the Trans Am to leap across a gap in a broken bridge at high speed, a feat that looked incredible on screen but required some serious behind-the-scenes engineering to pull off safely. It was the kind of sequence that could make or break the movie's reputation as an action spectacle, and everyone on set knew it had to look absolutely perfect. To achieve the necessary distance and height, the stunt team rigged the car with a hidden rocket-assisted boost that would fire at just the right moment during the jump. Director Hal Needham personally oversaw every detail of the stunt coordination, drawing on his own extensive experience as one of Hollywood's most accomplished and fearless stunt performers. Nothing was left to chance. The angle of the ramp, the speed of approach, and the precise timing of the rocket all had to work in flawless harmony for the shot to succeed without anyone getting hurt. The result was a breathtaking moment that became one of the most celebrated practical stunts of the entire era. In a time long before computer-generated effects could fake this kind of action, audiences knew they were watching something real and genuinely dangerous unfold before their eyes. That authenticity gave the sequence an impact that digital effects have never quite been able to match, and it cemented the film's reputation as a movie that was willing to push every single boundary to deliver real thrills. Number 17. The Day 4 Cars Were Lost. Behind the excitement of every high-speed chase sequence was a very real and very expensive cost: destroyed vehicles. The production burned through multiple Trans Ams during filming, with several being damaged or completely wrecked beyond repair during the movie's most demanding stunt sequences. Each car that was lost meant one fewer backup for the remaining shoot days, and the pressure mounted significantly with every crash, hard landing, and unexpected collision on set. The tight production schedule left almost no room for error when it came to managing the vehicle fleet. Unlike bigger budget productions that could afford to have a seemingly endless supply of replacements standing by at a moment's notice, this film was operating on razor-thin margins. Every destroyed car meant the team had to scramble to repair what they could and carefully redistribute the surviving vehicles across the remaining scenes that still needed to be filmed before time ran out. By the time production wrapped, several of the hero cars were completely unusable. Bent frames, blown engines, and body damage that no amount of repair work could ever hope to fix. The physical toll the action sequences took on the vehicle fleet was staggering, but it was also a testament to how committed the entire production team was to capturing real, visceral stunts on camera. Every dent and scratch on those cars represented a moment of genuine cinematic spectacle that audiences would remember and talk about for years to come. Number 18. The baseball field close call. Not every memorable moment in the film was carefully planned in advance. During one particular chase sequence, the Trans Am veered off its intended path and ended up tearing through a real baseball field that happened to be in the immediate vicinity of the shooting location. What was supposed to be a controlled stunt suddenly turned into a genuinely chaotic situation, with cast and crew scrambling to figure out what had just happened as dust and debris filled the air around them. The unexpected detour created real panic on set, as the safety of everyone nearby became an immediate and urgent concern. Stunt work in the 1970s was already a notoriously dangerous business, and an unplanned deviation like this could have easily resulted in serious injuries or far worse consequences. Fortunately, no one was hurt during the incident, and once the initial shock subsided, the production team had a chance to assess the footage and realized they had captured something truly remarkable on camera. Rather than discarding the chaotic footage, Needham recognized its raw energy and incorporated the sequence into the final cut of the movie. The unplanned nature of the moment gave it a level of authenticity and unpredictability that no storyboard could have possibly produced. It was the kind of happy accident that only happens on productions willing to operate right at the edge of control, and it added yet another layer of genuine excitement to a film that was already overflowing with unforgettable and jaw-dropping action moments. Number 19. Texarkana was movie magic. The story may have been set across the highways of Texas and Georgia, but the actual filming locations told a very different story behind the scenes. Much of the movie was shot in small Georgia towns that were carefully dressed and angled to convincingly stand in for Texas locations throughout the production. The team used every trick in the book to create the illusion of a sprawling cross-country journey without ever having to actually make one, keeping costs manageable while still delivering a genuine sense of geographic scale. Creative camera work and strategic editing played a huge role in making the geographic deception work seamlessly for audiences. Scenes shot miles apart were stitched together to create the impression of a continuous route stretching across the South. Road signs, landmarks, and background details were carefully managed to avoid giving away the real locations. And the editing team worked meticulously to ensure that absolutely nothing on screen broke the carefully constructed illusion for even the most attentive viewers. The result was a cinematic geography that felt completely convincing to audiences watching in theaters across the country. Very few people ever realized that the vast majority of the film's locations were concentrated in a relatively small area of Georgia rather than spread across multiple states. It was a masterful example of how smart, resourceful filmmaking can create the illusion of a much larger world on a fraction of the budget, and it demonstrated the kind of inventive creativity that defined every aspect of this production from start to finish. Number 20. Authentic Southern wardrobe. Every great film pays attention to the small details, and the costume choices in this production were absolutely no exception. Rather than relying on generic Hollywood wardrobe departments, the production team sourced clothing from real Western wear suppliers across the South. Sheriff uniforms, trucker outfits, cowboy hats, and the Bandit signature look were all selected with a careful eye toward authenticity, ensuring that every character looked like they genuinely belonged in the richly textured world the film was working hard to create. That commitment to real regional style gave the movie a visual texture that audiences could feel even if they couldn't quite articulate it at the time. The clothing didn't look like costumes. It looked like something the characters would actually wear in their everyday lives outside of the movie. This grounded the comedy in a deep sense of place and culture that elevated the film beyond a simple gag-driven road movie and gave it a lived-in quality that resonated particularly strongly with Southern audiences. The wardrobe choices also helped define each character's personality without a single word of dialogue being spoken. The Bandit's look conveyed confidence and effortless swagger, while Sheriff Justice's uniform communicated stubborn and unwavering authority, and the trucker gear worn by Snowman reflected honest working-class authenticity. Every costume told a story of its own, quietly reinforcing the world building that made this film feel so genuine and immersive from the very first frame all the way through to the last. Number 21. Riding the CB radio craze. Timing can be everything in Hollywood, and this film arrived at the perfect cultural moment to ride a wave that was already sweeping the entire nation. In the mid-1970s, CB radios had exploded in popularity across America, with truckers, commuters, and everyday citizens all tuning into the airwaves to chat, share road conditions, and enjoy a genuine sense of community behind the wheel. The technology had become a full-blown cultural phenomenon, and the movie tapped directly into that widespread energy with pinpoint precision and perfect timing. Characters throughout the film communicated using authentic trucker slang and CB lingo that felt natural and believable to anyone familiar with the culture. Phrases and handles were woven into the dialogue in a way that made the world of the movie feel like a seamless extension of what was already happening on real highways across the country. For audiences who owned CB radios, the film felt like a celebration of their lifestyle, and for those who didn't, it offered an exciting and captivating window into a subculture that seemed adventurous and irresistibly cool. After the movie hit theaters, interest in CB radios surged even further than it already had. Sales spiked dramatically, new users flooded the airwaves, and the trucker vocabulary the film showcased became part of mainstream American conversation almost overnight. The movie both reflected and amplified a national trend in a way that remarkably few films have ever managed to accomplish, cementing its place not just in cinema history, but in the broader cultural landscape of the late 1970s as a truly defining artifact of its era. Number 22. The boom that changed TV. The massive box office performance didn't just reshape Hollywood's expectations, it sent powerful ripple effects straight into the television industry as well. Studio executives and network programmers watched the film's runaway success with great interest, recognizing that audiences clearly had an enormous and largely untapped appetite for Southern-flavored action and comedy. The numbers were impossible to ignore, and it didn't take long for the small screen to start eagerly chasing the same formula that had worked so spectacularly in theaters. Television networks soon began greenlighting shows that leaned heavily into similar themes: fast cars, rural settings, charming outlaws, and lighthearted chases through the countryside. While these programs didn't share direct creative connections with the film, the influence was unmistakable and widely acknowledged within the industry by anyone paying attention. The movie had essentially proven that there was a massive, underserved audience for this particular type of entertainment, and television was eager to fill that demand as quickly and aggressively as possible. The cultural shift the film triggered helped open doors for an entire wave of rural action comedy projects that came to define late 1970s and early 1980s television programming across the major networks. Its box office power gave network executives the confidence to invest in stories and settings that Hollywood had previously considered too niche or regional to attract a broad national audience. In that sense, the movie's influence extended far beyond the big screen, quietly helping to reshape the entire entertainment landscape for years to come, and leaving a lasting footprint that can still be clearly traced in television programming today. Number 23. Gleason's Night of Chaos. Stories from behind the scenes often reveal a very different side of filmmaking, and few tales from this production are as colorful as what reportedly happened the night before a key diner scene was scheduled to shoot. According to multiple accounts from cast and crew members who were present at the time, Jackie Gleason spent the evening before the shoot indulging in a legendary night of heavy partying that left everyone wondering whether he would even be functional when the cameras rolled the following morning. When Gleason arrived on set the next day, the crew braced themselves for the worst possible outcome. Instead, he walked in looking completely unfazed and delivered one of his strongest performances of the entire shoot without missing a single beat or showing any signs of fatigue. It was as if the previous night's chaos had never happened. He was sharp, spontaneous, and commanding in every take. The crew watched in disbelief as he turned what could have been a disaster into yet another showcase of his remarkable and seemingly effortless natural talent. That kind of unpredictable, larger-than-life energy was something that simply couldn't be manufactured or rehearsed no matter how hard anyone tried. Gleason operated on a wavelength entirely his own, and his ability to deliver brilliant work regardless of the circumstances became legendary among those who worked alongside him on the production. It was a perfect example of why Reynolds had fought so hard to cast him in the role. Gleason wasn't just a talented performer, he was a genuine force of nature, whose personality and presence elevated every single moment he was part of, both on and off the screen. Number 24. Hitchcock loved this comedy. In one of the most unexpected footnotes in the film's history, legendary suspense director Alfred Hitchcock reportedly became a genuine admirer of this freewheeling Southern comedy. The revelation surprised many in Hollywood, as Hitchcock was widely known for his meticulous, tension-driven filmmaking style, about as far from a car chase comedy as one could possibly get. Yet the master of suspense apparently found something deeply enjoyable in the film's infectious energy and undeniable charm that resonated with him on a deeply personal level. According to accounts from the time, the movie was among the very last films Hitchcock chose to screen privately before his health significantly declined in the years that followed. The idea of one of cinema's most celebrated and sophisticated directors sitting down to enjoy a wild comedy about beer smuggling and Southern sheriffs feels almost surreal, and yet it speaks volumes about the universal appeal the film managed to achieve across every demographic, generation, and taste imaginable. The anecdote serves as a powerful reminder that great entertainment transcends genre boundaries and personal preferences in ways that can't always be predicted. A film doesn't need to be prestigious or critically revered to win over even the most discerning and accomplished viewer. It just needs to deliver genuine joy and excitement with enough skill to make the experience truly unforgettable. The fact that Alfred Hitchcock himself apparently recognized those qualities in this production is perhaps the most unlikely and flattering endorsement the movie could have ever received, and it beautifully underscores just how broadly its appeal resonated. Number 25. The Bandit Run Still Rolls. Decades after the film first raced across theater screens, its legacy continues to burn rubber in the real world with no signs of slowing down. Every year, fans from across the country organize massive Trans Am convoys known as Bandit Runs, gathering together to celebrate the movie's spirit by recreating the iconic journey as a community. These events attract hundreds of enthusiastic participants and spectators, with rows of black and gold Trans Ams stretching down highways in a spectacular sight that would undoubtedly make the Bandit himself proud. The gatherings are more than just car rallies. They're genuine celebrations of the film's enduring cultural impact and the passionate community it continues to inspire with each passing year. Fans dress in character, share stories, and bond over their shared love for a movie that captured something timeless about freedom, rebellion, and the open road. The events draw multi-generational crowds, with longtime devotees proudly introducing younger fans to the movie's legacy and keeping the tradition alive for a whole new audience to discover, embrace, and carry forward. The fact that a film from 1977 still inspires this level of passion and real-world activity is a remarkable testament to the lasting power of its story, characters, and irrepressible spirit. The Bandit didn't just exist on a movie screen, he became a symbol of a carefree attitude and an unbreakable love for the road that continues to resonate deeply with people who refuse to let that spirit fade away. As long as fans keep lining up their Trans Ams and hitting the highway together, the engine of this movie's legacy will never truly shut off, and the legend will keep rolling forward for generations to come. From a simple beer smuggling concept to a $127 million phenomenon, Smokey and the Bandit outran every expectation placed on it. Improvised performances, high-risk practical stunts, perfect cultural timing, and raw charisma turned a modest production into one of the defining films of the 1970s. Its influence stretched from car dealerships to television programming, reshaping how Hollywood thought about Southern stories and proving that audiences didn't need prestige to fall in love with a movie, they just needed a good time. Nearly 5 decades later, the film's legacy continues to thrive through fan events, iconic imagery, and a spirit of rebellion that never gets old. What started as a scrappy road comedy became a lasting piece of American pop culture that transcends generations and still puts a smile on people's faces every single time they watch it. If you enjoyed uncovering these secrets, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more hidden stories from your favorite films. Which of these secrets surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below.